Peace for the Troubled Heart by Herman Hoeksema. How many are the days of thy servant? When wilt thou execute judgment on them that persecute me? Psalm 119, verse 84. Chapter 14. How long, Lord? Part 2. How many are my days? The days of thy servant, O Lord? The question is not inspired by wicked unbelief and lack of confidence, not by grumbling dissatisfaction or murmuring impatience. Such indeed may sometimes be the motive for asking this question. It always is the motive when wicked hypocrites, who outwardly travel with the people of God, but whose heart is in the world, exclaim, "How long?" Thus it was with the ungodly multitude that was with the church in the desert in the old dispensation. They loved Egypt, with its treasures and pleasures, its fleshpots and delicacies. Had it not been for the brick kilns and hard labour, for the oppression and persecution they endured as Hebrews, never would they have cared to move to the land of promise. When their oppressed became hard and insufferable, they were willing, though with bleeding hearts and a carnal attachment to the pleasures of the world of Egypt, to forsake the house of bondage and to seek the land flowing with milk and honey. In Egypt they groaned with the true children of God. How long, Lord? How many are our days in the land of oppression? Had the land flowing with milk and honey been entered immediately after Israel's crossing of the Red Sea, had the Exodus meant only the exchange of one carnal object of their desires for another? Had there only been no desert without food or drink? No waste howling wilderness in which all the streams were dry and in which they would be called upon to seek the Lord and to live in daily confidence in Him? Had there only been no Sinai, no law, no covenant, no long and weary way of battle and suffering? Had there only been no mighty enemies to fight in the land of promise? But now they wanted Canaan without God. They longed for the fleshpots of Egypt, for the land flowing with milk and honey, but not for God's covenant. They became dissatisfied with the way of the Lord in the awful desert and in rebellious and wicked unbelief. They asked repeatedly, "How long? How many are our days in the desert in which we must perish? How long must we suffer and die? Must we eat with sickening manna that our soul loathes? Oh, were we still in Egypt with its abundance, its fleshpots and cucumbers, its onions and garlic?" Such is the desire of the wicked, a desire that sometimes arises from the old nature of the child of God, for which, therefore, must be distinguished from the question of holy impatience. How many are the days of thy servant, O Lord? At times he beholds how the wicked prosper in the world. While his punishment is there every morning, his feet will well nigh slip at the sight, and he will be inclined to ask, "Is there knowledge in the Most High?" How long? Or a child of God who has been wandering far into the world and has drunken deeply of the cup of the world's pleasures, is chastised and put down on a bed of sickness and agony that will become his deathbed. Oh, that sick bed he may reach the stage when he will long to be delivered from his agony and prefers death to his present suffering. If only he might recover, for he still would prefer to live. Not the longing for heavenly perfection, but the unwillingness to travel the way of suffering, whither inspires the question, "How long, O Lord? How many are these days of my suffering?" Still in the question of unholy impatience, rather easily distinguishable from the motive that inspires the poet, for it is inspired by dissatisfaction with the way of the Lord. The way is one of suffering, of self-denial, of cross-bearing, and we do not want to travel it to the end. It is the expression of a desire to have our way turned into one earthly prosperity. not for a longing to see the glory of God and to enter into the heavenly perfection. It is a lack of confidence in the Most High, who causes all things to work together for good to those who love him, and hence a lack of submission to his will and way. It is disobedience, rebellion, murmuring against the Lord, refusal to bear the cross. A very unholy impatience indeed. Not so the question of the psalmist. The saint who asks this question is in a position to call himself thy servant. He is Jehovah's servant and conscious of it. He occupies a position in the midst of the world that enables him to express without shame before the face of the Lord that he is thy servant. Surely that he pre-proposes that he is a regenerated child of God, called out of darkness into the Lord's marvellous light. He is a partaker of the salvation the Lord prepares for those who love him. But it means much more. It expresses that he concerns of his whole life in the light of Jehovah's covenant as a divine appointment that he must fulfill, and which he keeps gladly. He stands at his post by divine appointment. He is called to represent Jehovah's cause. He is the party of the living God. Thy servant, Lord, am I. Willingly I abide at thy post. I am ready to serve and to fight the good fight. Yea, to suffer in the cause of thy covenant in the midst of the world. I do not ask thee to change the way. But, O Lord, I hope in thy word. My soul fainteth for thy salvation. My eyes fall with longing for the glory that is awaiting thy servant, O Lord. Here is the battle. There is the victory. Here is sin and imperfection. There is the beauty of holiness. Here is death. There is life. How many are my days? Lord, how long? For thy great name's sake, Lord, how long? When will I see the theodicy, the justification of my God? When wilt thou execute judgment upon those who persecute me? When wilt thou avenge the blood of thy servant upon those who hate thee? For as thy servant I suffer. A stranger I am in the earth. Thou hast begotten me again unto a lively hope, because of thy work of grace within my heart, and because of the gracious calling where therein thou hast called me. I am a stranger in the earth, for thou hast begotten me again unto a lively hope. Because of my work of grace within my heart, and because of the gracious calling wherewith thou hast called me, I am separated from the world. I love thy precepts, and would keep them with my whole heart. I confess thy name before men. I keep myself from the unfruitful works of darkness. The world loves iniquity, and hates thy word, and for thy name's sake they hate me without a cause. They have dug pits for me, they persecute me wrongfully, and they consume me. I am become a bottle in the smoke, like an empty wineskin hung up in tent or house, exposed to smoke and dirt and heat, parched and wrinkled, covered with soot, despised by the world. And, Lord, I would not have it so, for I am thy servant, the representative of thy name, thy covenant, thy cause, thy friendship in the world. How long, O Lord? The more the world triumphs over me as I stand at my post where thou hast stationed me, and the more I suffer for thy name's sake, the more I long for the end of these days of defeat and shame, and for the day of my perfect justification, when all the world will have to acknowledge that my cause is the cause of the Son of God, and that the cause of Christ is thy cause. And thy cause must have the victory, for thy name must have all the glory forever. And the glory of thy name is involved in the suffering and shame and defeat of me, thy servant. When wilt thou manifest thy glory? When wilt thou execute judgment upon those who persecute me? How many are the days of thy servant? How long, O Lord? Hark, the answer. It is implied in the question, for the question concerns the days of thy servant. This implies that these days are definitely numbered. Numbered they are by divine determination in God's everlasting counsel. Numbered are the days of the whole church in the world. Numbered are the days of each saint in connection with the days of the wicked and of the whole world of this present time. They must be fulfilled to the very last. For the days of thy servant in the world are determined with perfect wisdom and infinite grace, so determined that all these days, with all they contain, with all the suffering and approach they bring, with all the battle that must be fought in them, with all the prayers and groanings, with all the iniquity of the world, must work together for the salvation of the saints, for the perfecting of the saints, for the final condemnation of the wicked world. And here the final answer. Behold, I come quickly. Come then, Lord.